Hello, I'm true crime author Judith A. Yates, and this is my video series, Best True Crime. Hey everyone, this is true crime author and criminologist Judith A. Yates, and I'm coming to you from the front seat of this gorgeous 1988 Oldsmobile Delta 88 funeral coach made by Eureka. Now, why would I come to you from the inside of a hearse? It's really very simple. I'm talking to you now from the inside of a hearse because I don't want you in the back of a hearse before your time. See, everybody right now is talking about this pandemic that we're under, but we've also been under another type of pandemic for some time. 12 million people a year are affected by intimate partner violence. This is a pandemic. This is a problem. We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate our children. What else can we do? Well, we demand that the workplace educate their employees, even if it's just something as simple as putting out a few pamphlets in the lunchroom on domestic violence and places to call if someone needs help. Even if it's just to have a professional come in and set up a booth or talk during a luncheon or a special program. What about our colleges and our schools? We need to demand that there's some kind of training or teaching or resources available for kids whose families are affected by intimate partner violence. A safe place where they can go and talk about it, get some literature, get some information. It starts at home, it starts in our educational facilities, and it starts in the workplace. So, why am I sitting in the front seat of this gorgeous classic hearse talking to you about these issues? Because I don't want you in the back before your time, or a loved one in the back of this hearse before their time, and it's too late and everybody says, what could we have done? I wish there was something that we could have done. Where are we going? Well, first of all, I want you to jump in, get some snacks, get something to drink, and we're on our way. Let's roll. Buckle up. Magnolia Cemetery, one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States. Pass through these white columns and you will enter into a very interesting world. This is a historic cemetery of over 130 acres listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It is the largest burial ground in the city of Charleston, with an estimated 33,000 souls at rest. The city of Charleston was founded in 1670 and is chock full of history. This includes Fort Sumter, where the first shots of the Civil War were fired in 1861. It is now the largest city of South Carolina. The primary crop would become rice, and as a port town, Charleston would feature multiple auction houses for slaves and was a favorite pirates' landing. And as you can see here, pirates were not always met with Southern hospitality. When you think of the Deep South, plantations like the Hampton Plantation here come to mind. This is a current photo of the home, now a historical landmark. But this is how the plantation originally appeared. The Magnolia Cemetery is located on what previously had been a rice-producing plantation, Magnolia Umbra. This is the house. It originally had 5 rooms. The house now serves as the office of the cemetery superintendent. This is a stereo view card of the chapel, which was located near the central lake. The chapel barely survived the Civil War. An estimated 750,000 men died in this war. Some of the most famous are buried in Magnolia, including men who died in Fort Sumter. It's an eerie feeling to be at the gravesite of men who fought and died in the same grounds where that first shot was fired. The American Civil War between Northern or Union states versus the Southern or Confederate states lasted from 1861 to 1865. South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union. Sections of Magnolia Cemetery were destroyed during federal forces' occupations of the grounds. There is a special section of the cemetery reserved for Confederate soldiers killed during the Civil War. And one of the most interesting stories from history that is preserved at Magnolia Cemetery is that of the H.L. Hundley.
The submarine Hundley was not much larger than this Delta 88 funeral coach behind me. But it made history because it was the first submarine that attacked and successfully sank an enemy ship. The way the Hundley worked was really fascinating, and if you go online, you can find some animation and some photos of the Hundley and see with illustrations how it actually worked. Now, when the Hundley struck, of course, it went to the bottom of the sea and every man aboard her perished. Also, the enemy ship and every man aboard her sunk into the ocean as well.
But in 2000, the crew's remains, along with the Hundley itself, were recovered. Here are the graves of the third and final crew of the H.L. Hundley. In his book, Sons of Cain, A History of Serial Killers from the Stone Age to the Present, author Peter Vronsky discusses the ancient fear of the dead and responses across the globe where heavy stones were placed on the buried deceased. And there is a quote on page 47 where Vronsky notes, "Observers in the 19th century have already concluded that the tradition of cemetery headstones was a popularization of eons of the necrophobic immobilization of the dead under heavy stones or mill wheels." End quote. So the tradition of headstones wasn't necessarily to mark the graves of the deceased, but rather to keep them down from coming out of the graves. Funeral services over, the deceased were kept in this building until their graves were ready. It was designed to keep the bodies cool. Families were charged $25 a day for this service. William B. Smith's body was kept here for 2.5 years before his tomb was completed and he could be moved. But more on him in a moment. One of the most visited graves is Little Annie. Annie Care Aiken was born in 1853 and died in 1856 from diphtheria. Her likeness forever cast in stone, she clutches a wreath, a symbol of either victory in death or Christianity. Annie was the second of a total of 3 children from Joseph D. Aiken and Ellen D. Martin. The Aiken and Martin families are buried together in Magnolia Cemetery. Now I want to show you the most visited grave at Magnolia Cemetery. It's the resting place of baby Rosalie Raymond White. Rosalie was the daughter of Blake and Rosalie White. The Whites named all 3 of their daughters Rose. 2 died in infancy, including this child. As you see, the baby entombed here was born in Charleston in 1882 and lived for only 7 months. There are several reasons this grave is so poignant. As we walk around her headstone, you can see it's fashioned after a cradle or a bassinet. You can also see the likeness of little Rose. Her death mask hangs over the cradle. Death masks were common until the 19th century, replaced by the photograph. At one time in history, it was not uncommon for families to have portraits made of their dead, to include photos of families gathered around the deceased. Now come over here to marvel at the tomb of Mr. Williams Burroughs Smith, who left this earth in 1892 as the richest man in Charleston. He left school at 15 to go into the cotton business and eventually was worth a cool $2.5 million. He died in his home when he was 77 years old. This tomb is not just visually stunning, but practical. The front of the building you see here faces true north, allowing for maximum sunlight exposure to illuminate the stained glass window of the south face, and the solid east and west sides of the structure take the maximum force of bad weather. Cemetery construction began in 1850, and plots are still available today. There are 2 lagoons, and you can check out the wildlife as you stroll along the paths of Magnolia Cemetery. It's known for a landmark oak tree that measures 25 feet around and over 65 feet tall, and it's estimated to be about 800 years old. Once was the norm for Charlestonians to come to Magnolia for the day, and they even brought picnic lunches. They'd spend their time walking alongside the lagoons, enjoying the weather, and visiting with their departed loved ones. 1837 to 1914 marked the Victorian era in the United States, which brought about changes in our culture, art, the way we lived, and that included religion. A tepophile is a person who loves to go to cemeteries for historical, artistic, or even research purposes. And my favorite actress, Nicole Kidman, happens to be a tepophile. I hope you enjoyed walking with me through the Magnolia Cemetery in Charleston, South Carolina, and I hope you'll join us again with our Best True Crime series of vlogs. Please subscribe, please like, and check us out at truecrimebook.net, and we will see you again. I'm true crime author Judith A. Yates. You've been listening to my video series, Best True Crime. Thanks for subscribing, and be safe out there.